Let me have you envision this. Let's say you opted into a very cost-effective but automated one-size-fits-all diet solution. Let's say it was a, 2 or 3 week mini course that you had purchased and you got all the way through it. You're staying with that diet for another month, so you're probably maybe 4 to 6 weeks in, and you're not seeing the kind of improvement that you want in your symptoms. How would you feel? What would you do? Where would you go? What would be your next step?
Welcome to Resolve IBS and IBD Naturally. I'm Courtney Cowie, a nutrition therapy and functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner. If you are struggling with the symptoms of IBS or IBD and want to get to the root cause of your symptoms so you can take back your health through a whole person approach, this podcast is for you. Just a disclaimer that the information I'm presenting in this podcast is for educational purposes only and should not be taken as medical advice. You should always consult a qualified practitioner before making any changes to your health or medical regimen. That being said, let's get on with the show.
Today's topic is bad functional medicine advice that prompts people to buy programs that don't work. And I think this is a little bit of a elephant in the room topic because if you're like most people out there on a gut health or autoimmune healing journey, you're likely, regularly out looking for information, looking for practitioners, looking for programs, looking for solutions to get to the bottom of your issues yourself. I mean, this is where I started as well. I think it's a very natural starting place. And there's nothing wrong with that. And I truly actually do love working with clients who are really interested in learning and understanding what's going on and want to be their own best advocate and decision maker. However, there's quite a disparity of offerings, approaches, programs, and even dietary strategies available to help with different issues. And it can be very difficult for the average person to sort all that out and know what is a credible method that could really take them where they want to go and know when something isn't credible. So I wanted to do a little bit of a talk on this. And this has actually come up in my world many times with prospective clients, especially because normally when I'm engaging with a person for the first time, we're jumping on a 20-30 minute free call. We're going into what's going on. What have they tried? If they're telling me they've already been to another functionally trained practitioner or they've had a practitioner order them some functional tests that I could, for example, order as well, I really get curious and I want to know what specifically was offered to you, which different bases were covered. Were you given advice on just the testing that you did, or did this person go deep into diet? Have you actually log your food, look at what you were eating, give you feedback, that sort of thing? And partly why I'm doing that is to try to discern, do I feel like this was a very limited offering or strategy that they happened upon and ran with, not realizing that there would be potential gaps or deficiencies because it was only addressing one aspect of health? Or maybe there were other reasons that this strategy or method looked appealing. A lot of times what I'm coming up against with a lot of people is also a cost objective, which I completely understand because this is oftentimes 9 times out of 10 an out-of-pocket way of working. Whether you hire me or you hire another functional medicine practitioner, most of us don't take insurance, and that's just the reality of where medicine is today in terms of what it will and won't cover. But I always caution, again, prospective clients around, you don't want to make these decisions solely based on cost, because generally speaking, we live in a world where you get what you pay for. And although some people can afford to maybe charge more than what they might be worth 10 years ago, generally, if it looks like it's a really good price point, you're probably not getting as comprehensive a solution as you think you are. And so with this overview to kind of set the tone, I'm going to give you 3 different pieces of bad advice that I feel come up with these types of solutions that fall short. So bad advice number 1, if you're out in the cyberspace world looking for information on how to heal your gut or, put your symptoms into remission, is what appears to be a one-size-fits-all dietary strategy with no customization, no practitioner evaluating a food journal in the context of your symptoms. So kind of a ready-to-go box solution that can be done online, automated, that walks you through a strict, straight protocol, one type of dietary approach that's proven to help IBS, IBD, or autoimmune disease. Now, again, depending on what the approach is, sometimes this can help to a point. Where I tend to find the most problem with this strategy is that teaching a client a specific dietary principle or a template for how to eat to, for example, put IBS into remission is one thing. Having them actually totally grasp and translate what they're supposed to be doing with the strategy is something entirely different. And just working with so many people now on a one-on-one basis and, doing food journaling with them side by side for years, I've really had the chance to see firsthand, okay, how much of what I'm teaching them first and foremost is sticking the first time around, and how much is it I have to look at their food journal, literally make very specific modifications. Sometimes what I'll actually do, just to make it crystal clear, is I'll take a day of meals and I'll literally rewrite that with my edits and tweaks and suggestions to give them a very black and white example of, okay, with breakfast, I would actually tweak this and this. We're going to sub out this for this. And this is why I'm making this recommendation. Whether it's because I suspect that they're eating something they're sensitive to that's driving more symptoms, or because we've got some blood sugar handling issues and we need to maybe balance out the macronutrients a bit. There's other reasons why I might tweak things too, but this is kind of trying to give you a very concrete example of what I feel is needed oftentimes to really help people understand what to do on a day in and day out basis with their diet to find relief in their symptoms. I don't think just handing them a one piece of paper is going to be enough to get them there. I've seen lots of examples of clients, whether they did, the Beachbody approach with the containers or Weight Watchers. I've had some people on, maybe not as many gut health people, but certainly clients I've worked with who have had, weight loss resistance as one of their main concerns. Even just, low FODMAP diet, and that's it. That was kind of the guide they were given, and it was just a handout or using the Monash app, and getting very quickly frustrated with that because it's, I would argue, a fairly difficult diet to do because of the measurements and trying to keep track of which foods are high and low FODMAP and that sort of thing, especially on your own, and especially not having an expert to bounce questions back off of. And this is often the situation that people are put in. So, let me have you envision this. Let's say you opted into a very cost-effective but automated one-size-fits-all diet solution. Let's say it was a 2 or 3 week mini course that you had purchased, and you got all the way through it. You're staying with that diet for another month, so you're probably maybe 4 to 6 weeks in, and you're not seeing the kind of improvement that you want in your symptoms. How would you feel? What would you do? Where would you go? What would be your next step? These are kind of interesting thought experiments to do. And I sometimes will literally ask these questions to prospective clients who are on the DIY, cycle of trial and error, because it's difficult. It's difficult when we put our eggs in a basket and it doesn't work, and then we don't have that other person who's there to kind of pull out another tool in the toolbox and say, let's help here, or, okay, I see what you're doing. Let me bring in some expertise and guidance here. And, that's fairly common. I'd say I've come up against that a number of times with different clients who have gotten very frustrated. And I think in most cases, if they make the choice to obviously come work with me, they're at a position where they're willing to accept they need guidance, that they can't figure it all out on their own, and that diet is challenging to kind of wrap your head around with so many different approaches out there that you're going to come across as a person that's just trying to find answers, right? Bad advice piece number 2 that I wanted to mention is being out looking for programs and seeing options that are asking you as the potential client to invest $1,000 to $2,000 just in the testing part of the program, or just in that part of your health journey. That to me is a ton of testing. We're probably talking upwards of 5, maybe 6 tests or more. And I'm saying this because this is actually a common strategy that a lot of functionally trained practitioners run with. I mean, a lot of practitioners will just, as a standard course of working with a client, order up a slew of tests. And the intention in some ways is good because they're trying to get as much data as possible so that they're not missing anything. But the real barrier that creates for the client is it becomes more and more cost prohibitive the more and more testing is ordered. And so I've certainly seen clients, and I'm, even thinking about a client I reconnected with this year who had gone to a different practitioner and had a ton of testing done. I mean, I would have imagined spent thousands and thousands out of pocket, and including repeat tests, which sometimes are necessary. And not that she didn't get good results, but what I'm saying is that if you're looking at a path from start to finish, from my perspective, there are certainly more costly routes to take and there are more economical routes to take. And I feel like, again, where I really try to stand out from the crowd is really taking into consideration, like, I want data on this person, but I don't want to break the bank. And I understand they're already making an investment besides testing in just the cost of doing work with me, of being in a program, being in this committed path where we're going to work together and I'm going to really guide them for 3 months. I want to make that whole thing as doable and cost effective as possible and not get too hung up on having to run 6 tests for them. Now, that being said, obviously, if I'm working with a client and I've run some baseline tests that have gotten me great info and we're getting stuck as we go through this process, I certainly have another several layers in my toolbox and tools I can reach in and grab, and we can certainly pull out other tests to run if need be. But I feel like there's an art in not putting all of that out there at one point, and potentially overwhelming or intimidating some clients away from actually doing the work of functional medicine, including not having the opportunity to get guidance and help with their diet, with their lifestyle, with these other facets that are very much impacting their health that go beyond testing and finding root causes. So, that's one thing I wanted to mention. The other thing that kind of goes hand in hand with this whole testing piece and just investing a ton of money in testing is I often find that, not always, but often, the practitioners that are more inclined to run a whole slew of tests get very pigeonholed into what's called treating the paper. And this was something when I was training to become a functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner, we were cautioned multiple times over about. And what does that mean, treating the paper? It means dissociating from the actual real person you're working with and taking into consideration the non-quantifiable data. So maybe what you're picking up from them in terms of the dialogue or the body language or what they've revealed maybe about their childhood or their lifestyle or their relationship satisfaction or what have you, right? Like, there's all these nuances that go hand in hand environmentally, relationships, socially, that can impact health. And so really, if we're acting completely holistically as a functionally trained practitioner, that information and that aspect of their life experience is just as important as the physical data we're gathering through the testing. And so what can happen is when testing starts to become the dominant tool that we're using to help a client, which is often the case in a practice that's running 6 tests right off the bat, you can get too attached to combing through all that data and trying to bring into balance every single data point that you're finding that is not in range, so to speak. And so we call that treating the paper. So it's, for example, seeing low magnesium or low vitamin D. And I mean, personally, I would probably have someone go on vitamin D support if they were low. So that might not be the best example, but sometimes, especially functionally trained doctors will check all kinds of different levels in the blood. And if anything is off a little bit, they love to give a little supplemental magnesium or sometimes even hormonal support. And sometimes those things are helpful and are needed. But again, if we think back to the core issues at heart, and if this is a person struggling with severe gut inflammation, they've got diarrhea, they're on the toilet all the time, definitely I wouldn't want to give them magnesium, even if they need it, just because I know that's a high potential to drive more bowel movement. So there's a nuance to thinking through the whole symptom picture, thinking through the data you're looking at, and really, in a sense, integrating that into the person that you're dealing with, and not necessarily just getting stuck on, okay, there's all these data points, I'm going to bring these all into balance, here's this one way I know how to do it, boom, here's the plan, right? Like that's in a sense treating the paper. And so that's something that I was taught not to do for very good reason as an FDN-P. And this is something, again, I've seen in cases with clients who have worked with other practitioners and then come over, and thought to myself, like, gosh, you were kind of recommended to do a lot of different things to treat these irregularities, but you didn't feel any differently. And it ultimately just ended up costing them more because they're now taking more supplements as well. So this can really snowball and be, from my perspective, unproductive, because we're not getting to the core, to the root of what's really going on.
Are your struggles with bloating, constipation, and diarrhea keeping you home on Friday, Saturday nights, clicking through Netflix because you're dealing with stomach cramping? Or simply need to have a bathroom nearby? Have you stopped being active and joining your friends at the gym because it flares your symptoms and wipes you out for the rest of the day? How about avoiding social gatherings involving food because of extreme anxiety over food reactions or sudden bathroom runs in public? Or because you are too embarrassed to explain your limited diet to others? The isolation, loneliness, and depression that comes with an IBS or IBD struggle is real, and often worse than the physical symptoms. I'm here to tell you that you deserve better than just living with this reality and suffering alone. From a person who has lived this nightmare and come out the other end, and who has helped many others do the same, there is hope, and you are worth the investment. Click the link below to schedule your free 15-minute gut check call.
Bad piece of advice number 3 that I think is very relevant for this particular topic is looking for some sort of solution, and again, choosing one that's entirely automated. So whether that's a program, whether it's a diet template or plan, you're pretty much getting a done for you resource that you're paying a pretty minimal cost oftentimes for, that is guaranteed to help you, but there's no one-on-one coaching, consultation, interfacing with another human who could take a look at your unique diet or your unique lifestyle and help you troubleshoot and adjust this particular one-off program to you. And I mean, I will say that I love automations. I love that technology can provide us with a way of, creating some automated content and delivering more value to people by not having to constantly reinvent the wheel. But even with the process that I use with my programs, some of it is automated and is meant to be a value add-on in terms of teaching and giving people ways to learn important nutritional and lifestyle concepts that, if they want to go back and even review, they have that available to them. While then when we get together on the one-on-one, I can actually dig into their individual circumstances and customize and get even more detailed with these foundations that I've taught them through the automations. I personally feel like that's absolutely necessary. I don't think anyone would be able to take a program with me, have me completely be on the other end of it, not helping them, and get the exact same health results at the end of that 3 months. And so I personally as well will just say, from the experience of being, a patron on the other end for whatever automated program, and I've purchased some very nice ones in my lifetime, it's just not going to be quite as customized as it would if you have access to a real person to work with. And so I would caution you again around just, I guess, trading away the ability to have that expertise for a lower cost offer that might be limited and then leaves you with no guidance if you go through that process, and then you're no better off, or you've only gotten limited results.
Did you find this episode informative and helpful? I'd love to have you leave me a 5-star rating. Do you have questions about holistic approaches to optimizing gut health that you'd like to ask? Please leave your question or comment below, and I will be sure to address it personally or cover it in a future episode. Be sure to check the show notes for any resources mentioned in today's episode. See you next time.